So a few days ago, I noticed on YouTube there aren't a lot of videos that go over famous chess players' careers. So I'm going to take advantage of that and I'm going to start a new series where in each video I go through the different chess players like Capablanca, Paul Morphy, Bobby Fischer, all those, and just go over their careers, their history, some of their most notable games, and yeah. Alright, so for this video I'm going to focus on Paul Morphy. Paul Morphy was born in 1837 in New Orleans, and his family was very well off, and in that time period, chess was very popular to just play at the dinner table, to play casually after a meal with family. So he learned to play chess by watching his dad and his uncle play. One day, his dad and uncle were playing, and after the game, his dad had won, and Morphy stated that his uncle should have won. And so he reset the board to that position and showed what his uncle had missed, the winning idea. And his uncle and father didn't even know that Morphy knew how the pieces moved, let alone was a good player. So he after that, his family encouraged him to be playing at family gatherings, to be playing everywhere he could, and by the age of 9, he was considered to be one of the best players in his city. He continued to play until around 1850 at the age of 12, and he just stopped and devoted his time to school. And in 1857, at 20 years old, he graduated from law school, and he wasn't old enough to practice law yet. I think you had to be 21. So he had some free time on his hands. So he got a invitation to attend the first American Chess Congress, and he decided to attend that. His style was very aggressive. It was very direct. He liked to checkmate within 20 or 30 moves at the maximum, and it worked. In this tournament, he got 14 wins, 3 draws, and 1 loss, and these were some of the best players in the country. So at this time, most of the best players in the world lived in Europe. So the New Orleans Chess Club decided that he should play Howard Staunton. I don't know if that's how you say his name. Howard Staunton. He was the European champion, and Staunton refused to come to America. So eventually Morphy decided to go to Europe, and he attempted to play him a lot of times, but it just never happened, and a lot of people thought that Staunton was avoiding playing Morphy since this was in the late 1850s, and Staunton was considered his prime to be in the 1840s, so it's possible he just didn't want to play him because he wasn't in his prime anymore. He was kind of old. But so that match never happened. And so then Morphy went to Paris in the late 1850s, like 1858, I think, and to play Adolf Anderssen, who was now considered the best in Europe. And he actually won with 7 wins, 2 draws, and 2 losses. After that, he was considered to be the best chess player in the world. And in 1859, he was just 22 years old, but he retired from competitive chess because he didn't really have any serious opposition. He had beaten pretty much anyone and was just far ahead of anyone else in his time period. So after that, he tried to start up his law firm, but all of those attempts failed, and he pretty much spent the rest of his life just living off of his family fortune, and he refused any requests to return to competitive chess. So later in his life, he started suffering like delusions and paranoia and that sort of stuff. And in 1884, he was just 47 years old, but he died of a stroke. So Morphy was considered to be one of the best ever, and in my opinion, in like the top 10 best chess players of all time, because of how far ahead of his time he was. He understood the importance of fast development, controlling the center, open lines. He was very aggressive. He knew when to sacrifice, and he was not a player to play a dull game. He wanted to checkmate within 20, 30 moves, and it's very entertaining to watch his games. So in my opinion, he's one of the top 10 players of the world, and I'm going to show you 3 games. Is it 3? I'm going to show you some games that show that, some of my favorite games of his. Alright, welcome to game 1. Morphy has the black pieces against a German master called Louis Paulsen, and this is round 4 of the First American Chess Congress, so the first tournament that he played in after he graduated from law school and was waiting to be able to practice law. So the game begins with e4, e5. We have knight f3, knight c6, and we have a 4 knights with a bishop to b5, and Morphy plays bishop to c5. After that, they both castle, and Paulsen takes on e5, and the most common move here is just to take back, and it won't let me take back, that's weird, but it's just to take back and not lose anything, but Morphy decides to go a little off the beaten path and play rook to e8, after which Paulsen takes the knight, and Morphy takes back, and then he drives the bishop back with b5, and the bishop goes to e2. So after that, Morphy decides to take back his pawn and bring his rook to a very active square, and after bishop to f3, he just backs his rook up to e6. Then Paulsen plays c3, I think with the intention of getting his queen out this way, or preparing d4. And so Morphy plants his queen right here in this very nice square that a moment ago was guarded, but now that c3 has been played, the queen can now go here, and no pawns will ever be able to touch it. And so Paulsen plays b5, which is kind of interesting. We get the same pawn avalanche as Morphy did earlier to get this bishop out of the way. And so the bishop moves back to b6, after which Paulsen plays a5. We get takes, queen takes, and bishop to d7, after which Paulsen plays rook to a2, and Morphy plays rook to e8, just doubling up on this file. It's the only open file in the board, and he controls it very well, so he's doing very well. But the game is still fairly balanced. Now after queen to a5, queen to a6, Morphy decides that, hey, I don't need my queen. Queen takes f3. This is fine, I'm going to beat this guy. So of course he takes back, after which rook to g6 check, king to h8, 1, king to h1, and bishop to h3. And in this position, right here, the position is still completely balanced. It looks scary for white, but it's still balanced. If white finds queen here, yeah, queen to d3, because you need to guard this pawn. Because if you don't, there's going to be check, the king moves here, and then that's going to be mate. So he has to guard this pawn. And if he guards the pawn, the position is completely balanced, and the game is still completely decisive, because also it attacks this rook. So for example, if check, the king goes here, check, with the rook, the queen can take, because remember, Morphy is down his queen. So after takes, the material count, Paulsen would be up a pawn. But he misses that move, and instead plays rook to d1, after which we have check, king to g2 is king to g1 is forced, after which we have bishop takes f3 check, king to f1 is forced, after which we have another check, he moves his king, another check, he moves his king again, and Morphy takes on f2. And then the queen goes here because you need to stop this. If in this position, let's say a random move was played, that's just mate. Like, the bishop cuts off, the rook guards there, and that's just mate. So queen to f1 is the only way to not get mated, after which Morphy takes the queen, takes, and he plants his rook here to guard its bishop, as well as later on he'll have this. So Paulsen plays rook to a1, I think with the intention of just going here, maybe just trying to defend, because Morphy is up 2 points of material, and his pieces are extremely active. Look at how passive Paulsen's pieces are. So after that we get rook to h5, rook to h6, d4, bishop to e3, and Paulsen resigns, because there's no way of preventing this pressure. For example, a random move, for some reason it's not letting me make actual moves, but for example, a random move, check, or actually check this way would be better, and it's just a standard rook on the 7th, well, in this case the 2nd, and it would just be checkmate. So in this position, Paulson resigned, and it was a very impressive game from Morphy and one of my favorite. Alright, so this is game 2, and this is one of the most famous chess games in all of history. It's known as the Opera game, and it's between Paul Morphy as white and the Duke of Brunswick and his count as black. And the story of this game is, for those of you who don't know, the Duke and his count had invited Paul Morphy to attend the opera, and Paul Morphy accepted because he loved music, he's dead now. And so he accepted, and it turned out that once they got there, they just wanted to play chess with him, and he just wanted to watch the opera. So during this entire game, he's barely watching the board. He's trying to see what's going on with the opera, which makes this even more impressive. So the game begins with e4. We have e5, knight f3, and instead of the standard knight c6 that we see nowadays, we have d6, d4, bishop to g3, g4, and takes. And here, the bishop has to take the knight first before taking back. Because, for example, if you take back, we can take, and take because the queen is no longer there, and you're down a pawn. This is under attack, this is under attack, and you no longer have the right to castle. And you can go here, which defends all those threats, and then it's just a game of chess. You're down a pawn, and yeah. So instead, they see that, and they take the knight first. Queen takes, they take back their pawn, and material is completely equal. Bishop to c4 gets played, and that threatens mate, and so they defend it with knight to f6, after which we get queen to b3, which is attacking this from another direction as well as attacking here, so you can't defend both. So they play queen to e7. I thought they played d7, and instead of just taking this pawn, because if, for example, if this pawn got taken, there's check, and you are forced to take the queen, after which it'd be in check again, and they just get lead in development, and that's no good for the price of one pawn. So instead of that, Morphy decides to just develop a piece, after which c6 happened, which defends the b7 pawn with the queen. And then we have bishop to g5, and they here decide to just go full out and attack, which is a mistake, because if you look at the pieces, Morphy has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces out to their 2, and this queen isn't really doing much. This diagonal, it's just not really doing much, and this knight is pinned. So Morphy decides, I have an overwhelming lead in development. Once I castle long, my rook will be here, and I'll have another attacker. So he decides, I'm just going to take. And after takes, we have bishop takes with check, and in this position, already white is completely winning. We have knight to d7 blocking the check. We have long castles, which adds this attack. So now this is under threat, because if takes, come on, that was not my turn, but for example, random move, we have takes, and now this is hanging, except I would take with the bishop, but that's a threat. And so we have rook to d8, which just defends that threat, after which Morphy just takes, because it's hard to take back with anything. If you take here, I'm not even going to take immediately, because this rook isn't going anywhere. I'm going to play rook to d1, which is exactly what happened. And if you take with the queen, you lose your queen. If you take with the knight, you lose your queen. So taking with the rook is really the only good option. Relatively good. After which we have rook to d1, queen to e7, queen to e6, which just gets out of the pin and offers a queen trade. And for example, after takes, actually you'd take first, like this. You'd still be completely winning, but not a very impressive. It'd be a lot less impressive than what happened. So after they offered the queen trade, Morphy decides to take here, and after knight takes, play rook take, not rook takes. Oh, alright. So I thought this was later in the game, but queen to b8 is something that they overlooked because the king has no moves. It's check, and he can't go here because of the bishop, and it can't be blocked, so they're forced to take, and then rook to d8 is mate. Alright, so this is game 3. We have Henry Bird versus Paul Morphy. Bird is white, Morphy is black. Henry Bird's actually the one who came up with the bird opening, also known as the Dutch defense, so that's kind of cool. So we have e4, e5, we have knight f3, d5, d6, and then we have d4. Morphy responds with f5, and we have knight to c3. Morphy takes, and plays d5 to kick that knight out, after which Bird obviously moves it, and then Morphy pushes with e4, kicking out his other knight. The knight jumps forward to e5, which Morphy then plays knight to f6, which just defends both of these pawns. There's no need to defend them right now, but it might come in useful later. And we have bishop to g5, just adding pressure to that knight, because it is pinned to the queen right now. So we have Morphy plays bishop to d5, bishop to d6, after which Bird just tries to attack this pinned knight with knight to h5. We have castles and queen to d2, just with the intention of maybe coming over here, maybe moving over here. And Morphy plays queen to e8, just getting out of that pin, as well as attacking this knight. And Bird plays g4, which is a mistake because of a little tactic. You can actually take this, because that is the only thing defending this knight. So if you take here, after takes, we can just take this for free, which is exactly what happened. Is it? Wait, I'm confused now. Yeah, okay, so, and then the knight moved back to where it came from, and Morphy played knight to c6, after which the queen was attacked, the queen moved, and Bird took the knight, and we get this pawn structure, which is actually pretty good for black, because when you have the open b file, that was my phone, sorry, and you also have just this very strong pawn chain. And as not to mention this rook, which is just a killer. So we have bishop back to e3, rook to b8, again just taking advantage of that file that's now open. That's defended with long castles, because the king now defends it. And we have rook to f2, which looks impossible, and it's not the best move. My phone is going crazy, I'm sorry. Because the reason it's awesome is because after takes, you can actually play this ridiculous looking move, queen to a3, because it can't actually be taken, because that would just be mate. So that's actually what happened. A better move, it's a very cool move, but a better move, looking at, okay, you cannot trust the engine right now, it's telling me that king to h8 is the best move, which it might be, probably is, but. So rook to f2 gets played, after which takes, and we get the impossible looking move queen to a3, which obviously can't be taken because it's mate in 1. That was not missed, and c3 was played instead, after which the free pawn was taken, a check was given, and after this check right here, this is a key moment in the game. The king has 3 legal moves, 2 of them lose, and 1 of them is good. So you can go here, which is what was played in the game. You can go here, which was not played, and you can go here. This king to c1 is the only good move, because if check is given, you can just block, and you're safe. The engine thinks that white is actually better, because white is up material, and you're going to strike this attack. But this was missed, and instead, king to b2 was played, which leads to a sacrifice. Bishop takes b4, pawn takes, and rook takes, and here the queen has to sacrifice, because for example, if you go here, it's mate in 2 with queen to a3 check, here and here, which is mate, and if you go here, it's just mate in 1 with queen to b3. So the queen sacrificed back, after which you was take with check. e3 was played. At this point, Morphy is up 1 point of material, because of the sacrifice. He sacrificed his rook for a pawn, but then they just sacrificed their queen for a rook, which I think evens out, something like that. So e3 was played with the intention of opening this up, so this check is now possible. So it was taken, and that check was given, after which was blocked with a rook, which Morphy did not take, instead staying patient, giving a check, giving a few more checks, and then giving this check, because after the king moves, you can pick up this rook, which is exactly what happened. And then he took the other rook, and then he's simply up 7 points of material, because he just got a rook for free and a rook for a bishop, I can speak, and after which Bird just resigned, because he's 6 points of material up, all you have to do is you can just take this pawn. This is now pinned. Bring your king. Not to mention this pawn. You're just completely winning. So, most impressive parts of this game, let me just zoom forward, is this rook capture, which again, it's not the best move according to modern day engines, but it's just a very impressive move to see. Like, Morphy was the greatest of his generation, and it's completely seen through these games that I've shown today. And queen to a5 is just ridiculous. I would never have seen that. And then this game is just beautiful. He just cleans up, stays patient, doesn't take the rook, picks the rooks up afterwards, and then the game is over. Alright, so hopefully you enjoyed those games, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.